Alright, here we go. 2v2, half court 21. I've got 4 Kobe's. So my team is the 98 rated overall Kobe, and then my partner is the... Ooh, air ball. Okay, that is totally unfitting of the all-time great. That is Kobe Bryant. So today is the 1-year anniversary of his death. I didn't realize it until I saw it on the My Team title screen. And it's hard to believe that a year has passed. And I think I've mentioned it before, but I really didn't hear about it at the time because I had no internet connection. So I didn't realize that he had passed away until like 3 days afterward when my internet connection went back up. And I followed his career from start to finish. I mean, growing up in the 90s, I was like really into the NBA, and that 96 draft, I remember watching it live and just like writing down all the details of the players as they were being drafted and recreating them in NBA Live 96 for the Super Nintendo. And my favorite team at the time was the Charlotte Hornets, and they actually drafted Kobe Bryant with like, I think it was the 16th, no, I can't remember which pick. He was definitely a lottery pick if I recall correctly, but immediately afterward he was traded to the Lakers for Vlade Divac, who is the GM of the Sacramento Kings, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if he still is, but he certainly was at some point. And Vlade Divac himself, he was no scrub. I mean, he was a solid player. He was on that great Sacramento Kings team that took the Lakers, that included Kobe Bryant, to the distance in like the Western Conference Finals one year. And there's some interesting history about some controversial calls around that series, but this discussion is more about Kobe Bryant. So I remember just not knowing much about him at the time, and he has proven to be the best player from that draft, and that's no small feat when you consider who else was drafted in that class. Allen Iverson, #1, Hall of Famer. Ray Allen, Hall of Famer. Steve Nash, Hall of Famer. And I remember just, even from my memory, even without looking up, like the majority, like at the top of that draft, the players were front court players. But the best players were proven to be backcourt players. Another thing that was interesting, just watching like archival footage, the announcers Hubie Brown and I think a couple of the other announcers announced, besides the prevalence of front court players at the top of the draft, there were a lot of underclassmen, like freshmen and sophomores. Definitely Allen Iverson was one of those players. He left after his freshman season at Georgetown. But then you had Kobe Bryant, who didn't even go to college. He was a high school player, and that was, at the time, still relatively uncommon. Like Kevin Garnett, he went to the NBA out of high school the year before, but like, that's pretty amazing. Someone to be drafted right out of high school. That was a pretty big deal back then, trust me. I mean, prior to him, as I mentioned, Kevin Garnett, but before him, it was like the prior high schooler to be drafted directly to the NBA was Moses Malone, and that was like, I guess, years, if not decades prior. But the interesting thing is that Kobe Bryant wasn't even the youngest player in that draft. Jermaine O'Neal, who was drafted in the first round outside of the lottery, he was also a high schooler. And to be fair to Jermaine O'Neal and Kobe Bryant, they took a few years to develop, and that was something that was brought up at the time at the draft. And the scouting report stated that, like, you know, excellent potential, but it's going to take you know, 2 to 3 years for him to get to an NBA level, and that's exactly what happened. You know, for Kobe Bryant's first 2 or 3 years, he was a kind of a role player, but then year 3, year 4, he came into his own, perennial all-star, eventual champion, 5-time champion, if I'm not mistaken. They're certainly Hall of Famer. Definitely in the discussion for like one of... Oh my goodness. Okay, looks like I won't be able to earn VC, but whatever. So as I was saying, definitely in the discussion for one of the best shooting guards of all time. And he definitely was a worthy successor to Michael Jordan in terms of position, play style, tenacity, good scorer, versatile scorer. I mean, he's to be a good scorer, you have to take it to the basket, like that AI player did right there, off the glass and in. But he was a solid shooter, tenacious defender. Even at the time, I remember people were saying, you know, Kobe Bryant, Tracy McGrady, kind of comparable. As much as I like Tracy McGrady, he's one of my all-time favorites. I don't think he could match Kobe Bryant in terms of defensive intensity and consistency, and also the success. I mean, Tracy McGrady did win a championship as a role player with the Spurs, but he never led or was a key player for a championship team, unlike Kobe Bryant, who did the three-peat with Shaq and also a two-piece at the start of the 2010s. And I've got 4 different versions of Kobe on the court. I've got the 98 overall Kobe right in my control. I matched up against a 97 overall Kobe. So I'm controlling the early 2000s Kobe right now, and I'm face up against the late 90s Kobe. So late 90s Kobe is like 82 overall. It's got the mini fro. Oh man, we're losing bad. It's hard to concentrate. But I remember, oh, what the hell? Oh, even 82 overall Kobe's on fire. But I remember, yeah, his first commercial. He was actually signed to Adidas. I remember watching his commercial. He was talking about the crossover was his move. And he had a pretty good crossover, even though I would have said that Allen Iverson had the better crossover. But then Kobe later signed with Nike, and there have been reports that at the time of his death, he was considering leaving Nike and starting his own shoe brand called Mamba. I'll link to the evidence and documentation in the description. But he was hoping to have more of a say in terms of the creative direction. Knowing Kobe and his kind of worldly view, I wouldn't have been surprised if that had come to fruition, and he had designed his shoe brand, his personal shoe brand, to be like more of more affordable, because Shaq has done that, Marbury has done that. Kobe really seems like the kind of guy who would have that kind of mindset. I mean, certainly he made his fortune with endorsements to the major shoe makers, but just knowing him, his background, his kind of demeanor in public interviews, I appreciated that. He wasn't my favorite player, one of my favorite players or personalities, but I respected his kind of like even-keeled, understated kind of mindset. And that's kind of how I kind of view myself. I'm not so much like a bombastic personality. Kobe Bryant didn't really seem to be that kind of guy either. definitely. Oh, what? It's really interesting, yeah. I think most people kind of, the vision of Kobe in their mind is the 24, 2-4 Kobe, the shaved head, shaved bald head. But I was around for the younger Froby. And certainly Kobe Bryant was the cover athlete for NBA 2K10. I think that really set the 2K series on another level. Certainly was the start of the my career, my player mode. And I remember how the cover art kind of looked, Kobe's skin color looked like a lot lighter than it is, or was. Oh, shit. Oh, 82 Kobe, no. Oh. So this one's coming to an end. But even like his final game, which he scored how many points? He scored a lot. It was like the perfect end to the 96 year. Like that, I have so many good memories of that season, that year, 95-96. That was the year in which the Bulls won 72 games and the championship. That would have been the season before, leading up to that 96 draft. You could argue that the 84 draft was better, certainly. You had, who was in that draft? Certainly Olajuwon, Jordan. I have to double check who else. Maybe Barkley, maybe Stockton. But nostalgia-wise, 96 is amazing, and Kobe certainly was the headliner. And I like how, like, on the same evening, the Bulls' 72 win record was broken, but Kobe Bryant finished his career with a memorable performance. So it's really poetic how it ended on the same day. And yeah, so Kobe, wherever you are, thanks for being so dedicated to your craft and for obviously being a man who is invested in his family. I mean, certainly I'm not going to gloss over the fact that he was charged, if not tried, for sexual assault, even though he was acquitted. So I'm not going to comment too much about that because I don't know a whole lot about it, but that was kind of a stain on his legacy, if you can call it. And he certainly had a feud with Kobe or Shaquille O'Neal, but it seemed with time that they kind of resolved their issues. But what I like most about Kobe is just kind of his mindset. I can see how he would kind of rub people the wrong way, just being that sort of focused person who would demand things of other people. But he had kind of certainly seemed to have interests outside of basketball. So yeah, that's just kind of my reflection about that.